You already know him. A cloaked, crimson, glowing eyes, cold, white face, a demonic being. He has lived for centuries. He feeds on blood. With a single bite, he can turn you into a vampire like himself. Count Dracula. The most adapted character in cinema history. More than 500 films, series, plays. But have you ever wondered, where did this character come from? Because when Bram Stoker wrote this novel in 1897, he took it from somewhere. And that place was not the misty mountains of Transylvania. It was a real man. A man who lived in the 15th century, who ruled a small principality, and whom history gave this title, the Impaler. In Romanian, Vlad the Impaler. But this man is not merely the inspiration for a work of fiction. This man is someone whose father handed him over to his enemies at the age of 11, who remained a captive for years, and who emerged from that captivity a completely different person. And what I want to ask today is this: what did that child endure there, that he became who he became? If this channel interests you, you may want to consider subscribing now. We tell the darkest, most mysterious, least known corners of history here. And this story is one of the heaviest I have ever told. 1431. A child was born in a small castle in Transylvania. His name was Vlad. His father was Vlad II Dracula, Prince of Wallachia. The word Dracula meant dragon in Old Romanian, because his father was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military order. This order had a single purpose: to stop the Ottoman Empire from spreading into Europe. So this struggle was in Vlad's blood before he was even born. But the geography of Wallachia determined everything. To the east, the Ottoman Empire. To the west, the Kingdom of Hungary. And in between, a small principality. Both sides wanted this land. Both sides wanted to draw this prince to their camp. Vlad, too, was constantly forced to switch sides just to survive. Today he made promises to the Ottomans, tomorrow to the Hungarians. This was what it meant to be a prince in this geography. And this balancing act came to an end in 1442. Sultan Murad II summoned Vlad II to Edirne. The meeting appeared diplomatic, but it was not. The Sultan demanded the prince's 2 sons as hostages. If the father failed to prove his loyalty, his sons would pay the price. Vlad II agreed. That morning, 11-year-old Vlad and his 7-year-old brother Radu were handed over to the Ottomans, right there beside their father. The father returned. The children remained. And this is where the story truly begins. They were first taken to Ekrüz Castle, a fortress perched on a sheer rock in western present-day Turkey in the province of Kütahya. Difficult to reach, impossible to escape. They were kept there. Then they were sent to Edirne, to the Ottoman court. Edirne was the heart of the empire at the time. Grand mosques, palace courtyards, architecture that conveyed power at every turn. And the 2 princes of Wallachia grew up in this city as captives. The language was foreign. The religion was foreign. The food was foreign. The faces were foreign. But none of these were the heaviest burden. Every morning when they woke, they waited for their father to make a decision. If the father betrayed the Ottomans, they would die by having their eyes gouged out or outright. This child woke up with that thought every single morning. Every week, every month, for years. They received an education at the court. Ottoman battle tactics, horsemanship, language, strategy, philosophy. It was an education given to captives. The Ottoman logic was this: we will raise them, instill our culture in them, and when they return to their lands, they will serve our interests. And this strategy worked on Radu. Young Radu was handsome, beautiful. History would call him Radu cel Frumos. Radu the handsome, gentle, charming, adaptable. He took easily to life at court, and he formed a close bond with the young prince Mehmet, Murad's son, the heir to the throne, Mehmet, the man who would one day conquer Constantinople and go down in history as Mehmet the Conqueror. At that moment, he was still a young man, and Radu became one of his closest companions. Over time, Radu became someone who truly belonged to this world. He grew up, converted to Islam, became an officer in the Ottoman army. He had come from Wallachia but no longer belonged there. Vlad was different. Vlad did not adapt. He resisted. He hardened. Historians write this. Vlad gradually became a more difficult, more cynical, more cold captive. But why? Partly it was his character. Vlad was already a harder, more stubborn, more withdrawn child, but the treatment was different as well. Radu was liked. He was accepted. He was settling into court life. Vlad was being punished. As word reached the court that his father was occasionally cooperating with the Hungarian King Hunyadi, Vlad's life came under threat. With every report of betrayal, Vlad's life grew a little more precarious, and hatred was what kept him standing. There is something important that must be said here. In his comprehensive history of Europe, published in 1996, historian Norman Davies revisits a dark theory that has also been debated by some modern historians. According to this theory, Vlad may have suffered sexual abuse during his years of Ottoman captivity. Some commentators even suggest that the roots of the cruelty later associated with his impalement atrocities may lie in that trauma. This is not certain. There is no direct evidence, but there are some clues, however suspicious they may be. Byzantine chronicles hint at a sexual closeness between Mehmet and Vlad's younger brother Radu, yet the true nature of that relationship remains uncertain even today. And when it comes to Vlad himself, the sources fall silent. That silence itself may be saying something. It must be noted that Ottoman captivity was not a dungeon existence in the full sense. Vlad and Radu lived in the palace. They ate, they drank. They were educated. Compared to the living standards of ordinary people, it was a life of comfort. But this comfort was the comfort of captivity. A life lived every moment under the shadow of death. And Vlad never forgot that. Because one thing is certain. While in captivity, Vlad began impaling rats, insects, every living creature he could get his hands on. In the courtyards, in the corners of the palace, in the moments he was left alone, was he reacting to what he had experienced? Was he releasing the rage within him? Was he imitating the methods of execution he had witnessed? We do not know. But it was certain that during those years in captivity, something was being sown through the creatures he impaled, and that seed would later grow into something far larger and more terrifying. Years passed, and in 1447 a piece of news reached Vlad. His father was dead. The Hungarian general Hunyadi had accused the father of treason. His elder brother Mircea had also been killed, his eyes gouged out, buried alive. Vlad received this news in the Ottoman court, on enemy soil, alone. And now there was no home to return to. Father was gone, brother was gone. The throne of Wallachia was in someone else's hands. Vlad was released in 1448. With Ottoman support, he briefly took the Wallachian throne, but he could not hold it. Rivals backed by Hungary removed him from the throne, and he was forced to flee once again. He spent years in exile. In Moldavia, in Hungary, passing from one principality to another. We know very little about these years. But this we know, Vlad did not stay quiet during his years of exile. He sought allies, he gathered resources, he knocked on every door, and most doors were shut in his face. The man who said he would help you today turned his back on you tomorrow. The prince who was your ally today was making deals against you tomorrow. Vlad experienced this over and over. And every betrayal hardened something inside him a little more. These years shaped him further. By now he understood one thing very clearly. Power was the only reality. Not love, not family, not loyalty. Power. Either you are the one who rules or the one who is ruled. And he did not want to be ruled. In 1456 he returned to the throne of Wallachia, this time permanently. And the slaughter began. Wallachia was not an orderly principality. The boyars, the landowners known as nobles, held the real power. Princes came and went, the boyars remained. And these boyars had not stood by his father when he lost the throne. They had not uttered a word when his brother Mircea's eyes were gouged out and he was buried alive. Vlad had not forgotten this. He invited them to a great feast, supposedly in honor of his accession to the throne. They ate, they drank. Then the doors closed. The elderly were killed on the spot. The young and able-bodied were shackled and marched to the construction site of a new fortress. Their clothes fell to rags as they worked there. They worked until they collapsed. And those who collapsed were impaled. Vlad called this stumbling. The weak fall, the strong remain standing. In Wallachia, corruption dropped to nearly zero within a short time. Vlad's style of rule carried a strange duality. On one side, extreme violence. On the other, a near-obsessive sense of justice. A story is told a merchant's goods had been stolen. When Vlad learned of it, he found the thief and had him impaled. Then he sent the merchant 101 gold coins. The merchant counted the coins. There was one extra. He went back and said, "Your Majesty, there is one coin too many." Vlad laughed. "Good that you said so," he replied. "If you had not, the stake beside you would have been made ready for you." The sources that recount this story present it as true. Perhaps it is, perhaps it is not. But the reason this story is told is this. In Vlad's Wallachia, everyone knew everything. Those who followed the rules lived. Those who did not might not wake up one morning. And this simple equation worked for an entire generation. According to legend, Vlad placed a golden cup in the town square. Anyone could drink water from it. And no one stole that cup, because everyone knew what would happen to whoever did. But the real reckoning was with the Ottomans. In the winter of 1462, Vlad cut off the annual tribute he had been paying to the Ottomans. Sultan Mehmet II sent an envoy. The same Mehmet, the young prince they had grown up with together at court. Now he was an emperor. He had conquered Constantinople. He commanded the most powerful army in Europe. And now he was ordering Vlad to pay tribute. Vlad received the envoys. But when the envoys entered his presence, they did not remove their turbans. Vlad asked them, "Why do you not remove your turbans?" "Our religion forbids it," they said. Vlad smiled. "Very well," he said. "Then do not remove them." Then he gave his order, "Nail their turbans to their heads." And so it was done. This can be told in a few words. But to have heard the sound of those nails in that room was something else entirely. Mehmet entered Wallachia with a great army. Between 90,000 and 150,000 soldiers. Vlad had 15,000 men. An impossible equation in open battle. So he chose a different path. He burned and laid waste to the land. He poisoned the wells. He set the crops on fire. He drove the livestock into the mountains. As the Ottoman army advanced, it found nothing to advance into. No food, no water, no people. Plague-infected patients were deliberately released among the Ottoman forces. Night raids were carried out. On one occasion, Vlad launched a night attack on the Ottoman camp with a force of 7,000 men. The target was clear, to kill Mehmed. Had he succeeded, an army of 90,000 would have been left without a leader. The assault drifted slightly in the chaos. They reached the tents of the viziers instead of Mehmet's tent, and Mehmet was not asleep that night. Vlad could not capture him, but in Ottoman sources, this is written of that night. The Sultan emerged from his tent at the break of dawn, and fear could be felt in him. Then the Ottoman army reached Targovik, the capital of Wallachia. The gates were open. The city was empty. But outside the city, spread across an area of roughly 3 miles, something stood. People impaled on stakes driven into the ground. 20,000 stakes, a person on each one. Ottoman soldiers, prisoners, captives of war. Crows sat upon the corpses. Infants had been impaled on the same stakes as their mothers. Mehmet stood before that sight, and Mehmet, according to Ottoman historical sources, though he stood at the head of a great army, something changed within him. His army froze where it stood, and Mehmet withdrew. As he left, he is said to have told his commanders, "What can be done against such a man? Against someone so ruthless to his own people?" And let us pause here, because this man is, at the same time, still a hero in Romania. There are statues of him. His face has been minted on currency because Vlad was someone who resisted the Ottomans, someone who protected this land. And when one looks at what he did within his own country, there are things that fit this narrative too. There was no corruption, there was no theft. There was order, an order built on fear, but order nonetheless. But this story does not have a happy ending. As Mehmet withdrew, he put someone in his place, Vlad's younger brother Radu. Radu was now the Ottomans' puppet, and the people of Wallachia were exhausted by Vlad. The boyars, the people, the soldiers, everyone crossed over to Radu's side. Vlad was forced to flee once again. This time he took refuge in Transylvania with the Hungarian king. The king would protect him, and the king imprisoned him. 12 years of imprisonment. This time he was truly alone. But there are things said of this period. Rats and insects were brought into the prison. He would impale them, build small wooden gallows, dress them in tiny robes, and execute them. A man approaching the age of 50, still occupying himself with insects. When you think about this scene, there is something strange about it. This man spent his entire life in pursuit of power. He ruled a principality. He repelled an army of 100,000. He reached as far as Mehmet's tent. And now he sat in a cell, impaling insects. Was it an illness? Was it a response? Or in his shattered psychology, was this the only thing that felt meaningful? We do not know, but this image says something. What had begun in captivity had never ended. That 11-year-old child who had been taken hostage was still there, still impaling animals, still enraged, and still searching for an answer. He was released in 1475. He returned to the throne of Wallachia for the third time. But this return lasted only a very short while. 2 months later, he was killed. Whether by his own soldiers or by Ottoman assassins, we do not know for certain. The Ottomans dismembered his body. His head was sent to Mehmet. It was impaled on a stake in the square of Constantinople. That was the final irony. The story of Vlad the Impaler ended on a stake. And now let us come to the Dracula connection. The year is 1890. Irish writer Bram Stoker was sitting in a library in the English town of Whitby. He was trying to write a novel, set in Transylvania, about a vampire. But the character had no name yet. That day a book fell into his hands. A history of Wallachia and Moldavia, dated 1820, written by a British diplomat named William Wilkinson. Vlad Tepes' name appeared in this book only in a footnote. There was no detailed account. Impalement was not even mentioned. Just a small note. And that note said this: Dracula, in the Wallachian language, means devil. The Wallachians would give this name as a nickname to those who were brave, cruel, or cunning. Stoker copied that note into his notebook, in capital letters, Dracula, and he gave that name to his character. But what is interesting is this: in Stoker's research notes, which ran to hundreds of pages, the name Vlad Tepes does not appear. Not once, not a single time. Yet in the novel, Van Helsing says this: a voivoda of his own race, who crossed the Danube and challenged the Turks on their own ground. That is the single sentence that defines Vlad's life. Whether it was intentional or coincidence, we do not know. But the moment Stoker found this name, he had found the right name. The moment when the inspiration of the real Vlad became even clearer came much later. In 1972, two historians, Radu Florescu and Raymond McNally, published a book, In Search of Dracula, and this book linked Vlad and Count Dracula in the public mind. The book sold widely. It made newspaper headlines. And from that moment on, the equation Vlad equals Dracula was embedded in the public consciousness. Historians still debate it. But this much we can say: the moment Stoker found that name, history had already written a vampire story over that man. Stoker simply put it on paper. And perhaps even if this connection is fiction, it is meaningful. There's also this: among the stories that spread about Vlad across Europe, there were rumors that he drank blood. Accounts of him eating bread dipped in the blood of his enemies appeared in some period sources. The greater part of these were propaganda put out by Vlad's rivals. But a lie repeated often enough turns into truth over time. And when these rumors merged with the bloodlust of the figure Stoker created, The vampire shadow over Vlad became permanent, living in the night, feeding on blood, immortal, and keeping people under his yoke. Vlad was all of these things, metaphorically, of course. Now let us step back. What does this story hold? A child entered captivity at the age of 11, handed over by his own father. He remained there for years. We do not know exactly what he endured, but when he emerged, he was a completely different person. The stake was not merely a method of execution for him. It was like a language. Fear brings power. Power speaks like this, he was saying. And it was the Ottomans who taught him this language of fear for years, every day, at close range. How power is established, how submission is ensured, how fear is turned into a weapon. Vlad learned this in the hands of his enemy. And the day came when he used what he had learned against them. Does this make him a hero? The Romanians say so. Does this make him a monster? The rest of Europe thinks so. Perhaps both are true, perhaps neither. Perhaps when an 11-year-old child wakes into a world where his father has abandoned him to his enemies, he builds himself armor in order to survive in that world. And over time, that armor transformed him. Or perhaps that armor was always there. And captivity only made it visible. Bram Stoker took a name. But perhaps without even realizing it himself, he took the right name. Because Vlad's story was already a vampire story, just of a different kind. Not one that feeds on blood, but one that feeds on fear. Not one who is immortal, but one who is lethal. And most importantly, one who was once a victim himself. A child handed over by his father, raised in the hands of the enemy, emerging after everything inside him had been extinguished. And perhaps the real question is not this. Why did he become who he became? The real question is this. Could he have been anything else? I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Write in the comments, what did Vlad make you think of most? Hero, victim, or monster? History is full of dark and layered stories like this one. I will tell them all. La Revedere.